Though the slavery question is settled, the race question will be with us always. It is in our politics, it is in our courts, it is on our highways, it is in our manners, it is in our religion and in our thoughts, all the day, every day. Well, what a gift you have all given by helping to birth this museum so that everyone who visits will realize that we are all touched, shaped, and enriched by African American history and culture all the day, every day. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Mayor of the District of Columbia, Vincent Gray.
Good morning. Not to worry, we have decreed there will be no more snow in the District of Columbia ever. As mayor of the nation's capital, it is my honor to greet you and on this auspicious occasion here in our great city. You've gathered here today to break ground on a site that will provide the foundation for much more than simply another new building in Washington, D.C. Today's groundbreaking is a milestone that fulfills the dreams and aspirations of many generations and honors all of those on whose shoulders we stand at this point. This will be a museum for all Americans. It will celebrate every American story, not just Black history. The fact that the museum will be completed in 2015 is indeed significant, because that year we also will celebrate the anniversaries of two significant events in our nation's history. 2015 will mark both the 150th anniversary of the constitutional abolition of slavery and the 50th anniversary of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. The 13th Amendment fundamentally changed our Constitution and our nation, and the Voting Rights Act allowed America to fulfill its promise. One of the great African American leaders who helped guide our nation to live up to its own creed now has a monument dedicated to him not far from here. Just last month, we celebrated Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s birth. And a few months ago, we dedicated his memorial, another national monument that was a long time coming. His dream was that we could all come together to make our nation and our world a better place. His message was one racial group, but for all people of all backgrounds, ethnicities, and creeds. This museum will be a tangible manifestation of Dr. King's dream. As the mayor of a city that itself is central to the story of freedom for all Americans, I eagerly anticipate the completion of the National Museum of African American History and Culture, and I'm proud that the District of Columbia will be its home. Thank you very much, and I look forward, as all of you do, to 2015 when we will reconvene here for the official opening of our new museum. Thank you very much.
We all know that the Smithsonian Institution is a place of learning. It's a place where history, art, and culture come alive in a vibrant way. And helping to make sure that this happens is Dr. Richard Curran. For many years, he was the force behind the annual Folk Life Festival, which draws more than 1 million people to the National Mall for two glorious weeks in the month of June. And now, as Undersecretary for the Smithsonian, he helps guide the work of the History and Culture Museums, including the one for which we are breaking ground today. It gives me great pleasure to present the Smithsonian's Undersecretary for History, Art, and Culture, Dr. Richard Curran.
Good morning. All that Undersecretary stuff, I am Lonnie Bunch's downfield blocker. Only once in a generation have citizens and leadership of this country gathered to sink a shovel into the ground of this National Mall to establish a museum, a library, an archive, or gallery. But let us for a moment reflect on the history that leads us here today. Exactly 150 years ago, in February 1862, with the Civil War raging, the Smithsonian hosted a series of abolitionist lectures. President Abraham Lincoln, leading officials, and large audiences attended. Newspaper coverage assured that the nation knew about these lectures. Their aim was to convince the president to end slavery. Week after week at the Smithsonian, Horace Greeley, Wendell Phillips, Ralph Waldo Emerson, others spoke. Frederick Douglass, the great American orator, was scheduled to give the culminating lecture. But such were the times in America, such were the divisions, that Joseph Henry, the Secretary of the Smithsonian, and science advisor to the president, said, "I will not allow a black man to speak in the rooms of the Smithsonian." Frederick Douglass was denied his place in the National Museum. The irony was that Secretary Henry's most reliable staff member was a man named Solomon Brown, an African-American poet, self-educated scientist. He built the exhibits at the Smithsonian. He made the maps. He served the Smithsonian for 54 years. And many others, some in this room, followed Brown, guarding treasures, cleaning the museums, carrying out the research, developing programs, and helping to lead the institution. The historical record, though, is checkered. Notably, in 1891, the Smithsonian's National Zoo opened its grounds to African Americans on Easter Monday, given that the community was not allowed to participate in the celebrations on the White House lawn. Well into the 20th century, curators purposefully excluded African American history. In 1947, the descendants of Christian Fleetwood tried to integrate the Smithsonian's collections by donating the Medal of Honor this black soldier had won for heroism in the Civil War. They were rebuffed until the Secretary of the Smithsonian at that time intervened. And with the Poor People's March on Washington in 1968, many advised closing the Smithsonian museums to keep the people out. Secretary Ripley did the opposite, keeping them open extra hours in order to let everyone in. Now, we've come a long, long way since Joseph Henry uttered those words. And we can't change what he said, but we can correct it. With this building, we can today proudly say Frederick Douglass's words will certainly be heard in the rooms of the Smithsonian. So too will those voices of millions of others. Simply, this museum makes for a more inclusive Smithsonian, a more inclusive America, and that is good for this country, and it's good for the world. The co-chairs of the Museum's Advisory Council, Linda Johnson Rice and Richard Parsons, have played key leadership roles in ensuring that we hear the many compelling voices of our nation's history. Linda is the chair of Johnson Publishing Company, publisher of Jet and Ebony magazines. Dick is the chair of Citigroup. Please give a warm welcome to Linda Johnson Rice and Dick Parsons.
On behalf of the Advisory Council of the Smithsonian's 19th museum, the National Museum of African American History and Culture, Linda and I would like to extend our sincere appreciation for your sharing this incredible moment with us. We would especially like to thank all of our founding donors, and it's an honor to celebrate this important museum with President and Mrs. Obama, a distinct, unique, great honor, fabulous honor. While you are all dignitaries, I'd like to just make mention of the fact that Eleanor Holmes Norton, the district representative, Congressman Clyburn, are here, as well as so many of our great supporters and other distinguished guests. All of you have helped achieve this significant milestone. Thank you for taking this journey with us, and one of the things I'd like to do, because nobody gets anything done by themselves or even with an able and beautiful partner, we have a council, you've heard it referred to before, that has been with us on this journey, and with Lonnie all supporting and advising. I'd like the members of the Advisory Council to stand and receive your applause and appreciation. And if I can be allowed just one moment of personal reflection before I turn it over to Linda, the significance of this day to me. You know, it's often said, and I've read it many times, that history is written by the winners. History is written by the winners. And to me, the reality of this museum puts an exclamation mark at the end of the sentence that after 400 years of struggle, of triumph, of tragedy, of turmoil, of turbulence, we won.
Well said, Dick, well said. As members of this council, we have had the pleasure of witnessing a vision take shape. One that, as Lonnie Bunch has indicated, will encourage us to remember, reflect, and rejoice. One that will help us better understand the hope, the optimism, the struggles, the determination, and triumphs of the American story. Today, we will break ground for a museum that has been a long time in the making, and I'm delighted to introduce one of the champions that made it a reality. Congressman John Lewis is a symbol, the last surviving speaker from the 1963 March on Washington and a hero of the Civil Rights era. In February 2011, John Lewis received the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the nation's highest civilian honor. He sponsored the legislation in the House of Representatives to establish this museum. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Honorable John Lewis.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you, Linda, for those kind words of introduction. Mr. President, Mrs. Obama, Mrs. Bush, my colleagues from the Congress, my beloved friends, what we witnessed today will go down in history. It is the substance of things hoped for and the validation of our dreams. It is the moment of people protested, struggled, and longed for. It is the moment millions of our ancestors believed in, but died never to behold. It is that point of critical mass when an idea becomes so powerful, it leaves the rims of inspiration and becomes visible, even to the untrained eye. This is an idea whose time has come. When I think about all it took to reach this point, the Black Civil War veterans who took up the cause many decades ago, the spirit debate and the long years of silence, the language of advocates and their opponents. When I think about the plane crash that killed one champion and the election of this poor